So the very first episode of WWE Unreal is on Netflix. There's 5 episodes up there in this particular documentary series. Um, in the first episode, it was called, pardon me for being unprepared, but let me look it up because I did not look up what was the first one called. The first one is called New Era, and what it did was it chronicled the January 6th episode on Netflix, which is where their flagship show now resides as its home. If you know, then you know that NBC Universal was WWE's home for decades, and now they have moved to Netflix, and with that $1.5 billion deal. And this particular episode was the start of WWE moving into that new era. It chronicled stars like John Cena, Rhea Ripley, Cody, and CM Punk. And it showed, the inner makings of some of the complexities of that show, starting off with Cody Rhodes really wanting to be a part of the show. Cody Rhodes wasn't a part of the show the way that he was, but the reason why he was woven into it was because, he's the flagship hero guy and they wanted him to be there. He wanted to be there and they figured out a way to let him be there without him having to take up too much time and space on the show. With The Rock having his moment, John Cena having a moment, and then these massive matches like with Roman, Solo, CM Punk, Seth, and with Rhea and Liv Morgan, there needed to be able to have time. And what we learned in this particular show is Gorilla was named after Gorilla Monsoon because Gorilla Monsoon was the man who would maintain their time backstage when they had to produce shows. They didn't have everything that they have in terms of amenities now. So back then, there was a human doing it, and that human was former wrestler Gorilla Monsoon. So Gorilla position is named after him out of respect for the job that he did, which is a very hard one, to be fair. Looking at how Gorilla is set up and everything that they do, everything facilitates from the producers and, of course, the creator, head of creative, and then you've got head producers and you have the match producers. These guys are all sitting in Gorilla. There's at least 5 to 6 people manning this show every single week. It's custom built for each arena every single week. And those 6 seats that are there are all designed to maintain the show, the flow of it, and everything in between. These guys control what cameras show what we see. Everything is meticulously produced down to the last piece. So nothing that we see isn't intentional, is what I'm trying to say, which I've been telling people this for years, but they're like, no, this was off the cuff. No, it's intentional. Oftentimes what we see on TV, even if it goes off script, it is intentional. They have a particular way that they structure how it's supposed to be seen, what we see in terms of emotion. This is why we get camera zooms on certain people's faces. This is why we see their reactions as great as we do, because someone is back there maintaining the flow of the show and what we see. They are our eyes. They are detailing and structuring how this story is being seen for us. Now, they do operate in seasons, which is something that I assumed they would. They have to, in order to maintain the flow of the show throughout the year. So I like to liken WWE in terms of a year rather than a season. But working with it as a TV show in seasons is fine. But when it comes to the end of the season, they don't pause or break, which is something that I believe that they should be doing. But there are a lot of ex-wrestlers backstage that help man this show. Billy Kidman, Chris Park, Bobby Roode, Michael Hayes, and then former manager and current, VP Bruce Pritchard are all back there, including former wrestler. Chris Park is Abyss, by the way. He's a former wrestler known as Abyss. Um, Michael Hayes was a part of the Freebirds, and then Bruce Pritchard used to be Dude Love, I believe his name was, or um, he was one of those. I remember his character. He used to have that really dark red tan. He had Brother Love was his name, and he had the white suits. He looked like a televangelist was the idea for his character, and that's what he gave. Um, but when they started the show, they started to give you an insight into how they were producing January 6th, which was the Netflix debut of the show. And in this thing, what we got was a little insight of why we get the type of shows that we get in terms of storylines and how they are structured and built. And I'm going to say this, and some of you are going to be like, oh boy, but I need you to walk with me first, and then you can make your comments. These were all the top guys in the room with Triple H. There were no, just writers all together. It just seemed like these were all the top people in the room, with the exception of the head writer, because she has like a sandy blonde to brown style hair color. These guys that were in this room was the SVP of writing. There were at least 5 to 6 white men and 1 white woman in this room talking about the Netflix show. And that kind of struck me as odd. But it also explains a lot when it comes to fans' assessment of the show and what we see. And when they're coming up with ideas and everything, I understand that they have to assess more than just color and everything. But my problem with what I saw is exactly what I've always assumed, is that everybody in the higher ups are not fully represented throughout the company in terms of race and gender. That is not expansive. That is not seen on a more, I guess you could say, global representation level, which is problematic to me, because you need to have your company reflect the superstars that you are producing and putting out. And if you have your backstage just as diverse as your front office, as I would put it, your first line of defense, which is your superstars, then you will have a better curated space to have better creative. It lends more to the creative, in my opinion. The stories that are structured are going to be different by how many people can interact, because you can cut some things that would come across as crass, racist, sexist, ableist. It will dismantle that before you even get to the cutting room floor. It is insane. It is necessary and integral to the bottom line of your company to diversify it, to ensure that everybody's represented, not in terms of, oh, just hire her because she is in a wheelchair, or hire her because she's a woman. Hire them so that they are qualified to do the job, but also look to make sure you are fully represented and diverse in your company. It should be at the forefront of how you make this work. I understand how wrestling is structured. It is complex, but it in itself is just, it's a very good complex show. However, even in other forms of entertainment, and you need to be represented in all aspects so that you can have a wider variety of creativity. I can tell that this is why we get the kind of stories that we get, because of what we're seeing in terms of who is structuring the stories, right? And it's no shade to Triple H or any of the writers on the job. They're hired, they do their jobs. I'm just saying, maybe we start diversifying our business so that we can have a fuller, richer culture when it comes to producing these stories for the shows, is all I'm saying. If that makes sense. So you got like a combo package here with the WWE Unreal series. What you get is some in-depth analysis of backstage and how they really do this. And we've been, as fans for us, and for those of you who aren't fans and you're listening to this, as fans, we have been screaming this for years that it's not as easy to do this job and go out there and do a match and make it look good and you look great and also make sure that you are portraying your character effectively and ensuring that the story that you're trying to get over is actually getting over. All of these things come into play, and it doesn't, and you're not even thinking about the superstars themselves and how they have to, not only think about these things, but they also have to be human and worry about home and worry about the things that plague them the most. These are things that come into play when it comes to being a WWE superstar. When you look at the first opening minutes of the show, Cody Rhodes is making it very clear that he's always wanted to be a WWE superstar. He's always wanted to be the guy for WWE, and he finally has it. And his wife Brandy explained the demand of being the top guy, the demand of being the guy who's holding the title, the titular title, who's at the top of the mantle. And they made it very clear that Cody right now is as close to a pure baby face as you're going to get. And they kind of gave you some insight into how this could work, because he and Triple H were back there talking, and um, he says, you're the baby face. You're the top guy. You're the top baby face in the company right now. And he says, well, we'll keep going until we can't, until, you can't do it anymore. And Triple H was like, that's our job. We have to figure out how to pivot, which is the truth. Sometimes I think, especially as fans, we automatically think the answer, oh, just turn them heel, that'll work. And that's not always the answer. That is not always the answer. I am of the school of thought is exhaust all your options first and then turn them heel. And Triple H made a very valid point. In this day and age, being a babyface is not an easy task. It's very, very hard to stay on the straight and narrow. It's easy for you to be a heel and do convoluted, convicted, vindictive things. It's easy and it's fun to say something disrespectful to somebody else or go off the cuff and take somebody out and attack the fans and attack the city that they're in, because that's going to get you a really cheap pop. That's going to work every single time. But it is hard. It is hard to be the guy that the fans are going to rally behind for doing what is right. It's hard to be that guy. It's hard for you to stay on the straight and narrow when it is so easy to be taken down that path of villainy. It is hard for you to be that good guy. We're talking straight laced, pure good guy, full on John Cena, early PG, mid PG era, where you rarely fail. You know what I'm saying? You not necessarily fail, but you rarely are seen as, oh, here comes the good guy. Because people get very, very jaded by that. They're like, oh God, you're boring, because all you're gonna do is come out and be courageous and brave. Oh my God. And to me, I find that to be very interesting. You are you are happy with the titular bad guy because that guy somehow resonates with you in some kind of way, because you know what you would do in a certain situation. You can't tell yourself that you would be straight laced, keep it straight on the straight and narrow, and wouldn't do anything bad per se. Whereas the character we're watching is doing his damnedest, if not, fighting against the grain to be a straight laced guy, to do the right thing. And you're like, that couldn't be me. So you don't resonate with him. You automatically resonate with the villain, because the villain confirms your idea that this is normal human behavior. There's a lot of psychology that goes into it, which is very, very interesting to me. It always it always interested me in terms of the dichotomy of good and evil and how they portray out in society itself. Most people look at it, especially in wrestling. The idea of it is to cheer for the good guy and to boo the bad guy. But when the bad guy says something that resonates with you, does something that resonates with you that isn't necessarily bad, it's just not good. You know what I mean? You're like, I kind of see where they're coming from. I kind of get it. But then the more that they start to do and the more that they start to talk, you resonate even more. And I believe it's 90% of the time, it's because you realize that you are more on the villainous side than you would be on the face side or the hero side. And I would liken myself to say that that is not true for me. I prefer a good hero, but I like a hero that's got a little grit to them. I don't like my hero to just be nice. I don't want a hero to be just sitting there, just taking being a bullied, just taking being disrespected. Like, I want you to get mad and fight back. To me, that is human nature, is to not allow a person to bully and dominate you simply because they feel like you have something that they want. That is reality, in my opinion. Now, WWE and wrestling in general, they do it completely different. It's not really cut and dry these days. There's a very much a gray area when it comes to the E and everything in between. But I will say they do a good job at structuring the stories so that it is understood exactly where we are and where each particular character is in the story. They may not be a true villain or a true hero. They simply are people in the midst of this battle. And sometimes you understand and agree with what they're saying, and other times you think they're batshit crazy. But I think that's the beauty of how the stories are structured, how they're layered, and the complexity of each person in each story. That to me is more realistic than just a simple, well, he's a heel and he's a villain, and that's the way it should be. Either way, it makes it so that you can have deeper and better conversations. You're not stuck in this just one wheel on a hamster type of, disrespect. You get more complex, realistically, seen stories, if that makes sense. As the show progressed for the first episode, you kind of got an idea of how the superstars really feel about being deep in the trenches of this show. They get high anxiety from before they go out there, so much so that it's almost crippling. You saw how Rhea Ripley was deathly panicked before the January 6th episode and how it all went down for her. She had special gear made for the show, so much so that she ended up not even being able to wear it because she talked herself out of it. She was like, I don't look good. It was just after Christmas. I gained some weight. I can't wear this. I'm going to wear this. It was so much going on. The girl couldn't even decide what type of makeup she wanted to wear when she sat down in the chair. She was just like, do whatever. She was so much inside of her head, so panicked, so anxiety ridden that she almost cut herself off before she can even get started. And then she showed how she and Priest are extremely close and how she was running what she was supposed to do by him. And he was like, hey, just remember, some things might need to get cut, for time. You might need to always less is more. Don't always think you need to include or add something in to make it look great. Stick to what you know, go for what you know, and then if you can add a little razzle dazzle in there, then do that. But don't forget the emotion. Don't forget the connection. That's something that we have to have. You know what I'm saying? So after it cuts from her, they gave you a little bit of Cody, and then they gave you a little bit of John Cena, and they were talking about how it was his 25th year, and they definitely were looking into giving him his spotlight of his moment. This was kicking off his 25-year tour. John Cena made it very clear, that he was at a point in his life where, while he loved the business, he was appreciative for everything that they gave him, he simply physically cannot do this business anymore. He just can't. And he's like, me just doing the you can't see me hurts my hip. I can feel it in my hip. I'm like, God damn. Like, what's the Jesus? Like, damn, waving your arm hurt your hip? God damn. Lord have mercy. That's crazy. So, I mean, I thought that was nuts. They had him signing the posters of his 25-year thing, and I was like, huh, that's interesting, And he ended up signing it, but he had his moment in the sun on the January 6th show. So did The Rock. And they kind of, when I told you earlier that they shoehorned Cody in there, they did. Because to me, the acknowledgement from The Rock could have been done in a way to keep kayfabe and to maintain the storyline that they were getting ready to head into. But they didn't. They decided to go off script and let it be what it was at the time. In hindsight, I understand it. It was cute. It was campy, whatever. But at the same time, I feel as though it didn't have to go that way in order for Cody to be included. And I think sometimes when the shows are going and people are just going a mile a minute, I think that they went over everything and they thought it through, but I don't think they understood how it would directly affect the storyline or impact how can I put it? I don't think they understood how it looked to us as fans in terms of a complete story, right? We're sitting and we're watching January 6th, the episode of Netflix. We're watching it. We're in awe of everything we're seeing. The Rock comes out and he completely, loves on Cody Rhodes and dotes on him. And then not even, 3 weeks later, The Rock is coming out there on, what was it, a Friday, and then he asked for Cody Rhodes' soul. It was just, you can link the two together and be like, this is why I was loving on him, because I want him to be a part of an extension of me. I want him to be my champion, right? Like, you liken it back to that, make it so that it comes full circle, that it works, like I recognize the error of my ways. I didn't see what I see now. I see the full potential of him. You know what I mean? Like, really, really double down on it. I don't think that The Rock did that enough to ensure that the fans understood the link. You feel me? Like, the aspect of it didn't link back to it enough. So it just kind of looked like it was a standalone thing, which is fine in some instances, but at the same time, it makes for a story that sometimes is hard to complete when the person that you're using isn't always going to be there to do it. And that's kind of one of the reasons why that storyline with Cody and The Rock fell flat a little bit for a lot of us, because he never came back. Like, Mania came around, he didn't show back up, none of that. And I think that's something that they have to think through when they include him in storylines. Like, okay, well, in 6 months, is he going to be here? In 3 weeks, is he going to be here? If that's not the case, then we either have to introduce somebody who will report back to him so that we can see it. He can record vignettes. Like, things need to be thought about and set up in succession. And I don't think that they thought that aspect of it through all the way. But to round this episode out, I'm coming up on 30 minutes. This show is almost an hour. It's about 55 minutes. It goes by pretty quickly for it to be 55 minutes long. But when you're watching this particular show, it really culminated with the end of the Netflix show. And you see CM Punk talking about him also being anxiety riddled for this show. And You see him talking to Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser, and they basically are like, this is why we do this. The anxiety is your fuel. Don't read too much into it. Use it to push you forward. And CM Punk is like, I'm pretty much anxiety ridden until I get out there, the light turns red, and they ring that bell, and then I'm in my element. I don't need anything. I can do whatever the hell I want now. I'm fine. I don't really get myself back down to earth from that anxiety, trip until I come back through that curtain and everything is done. Well, the only issue that happened on Monday Night Raw per Gorilla was that CM Punk and Seth Rollins went over their time. I thought the match was incredibly long, but I thought it was done that way. And Bruce Pritchard made it a point to say that people think just because we're on Netflix that we can go as long as we want. He said that's not true. We have ourselves set on a time schedule to keep ourselves pretty much structured and keep ourselves, they're micromanaged down to the minute. Down to the minute. And Abyss is sitting back there, aka Chris Park. He's trying to get the refs like, hey, tell him to cut the Anaconda device. Tell him not to do this. Move this forward. We're over time. We need to get this done. They finally get them to end the match, and it seemed like Abyss was really, trying his hardest to make them understand that he was trying his hardest to get everybody to be on board and to get out of that match. He was trying, and Bruce Pritchard, was in confessionals like, it's the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, there's only so much of this that we can control. And them being on Netflix obviously gives them a little bit of wiggle room here, but there's only so much that they can control. And in this match, a lot of times the superstars are the ones who are continuing to go on and ignoring, Gorilla essentially. I think, I don't know what happened, but I think Seth and Punk just had an agenda and they went with the agenda. To be fair, that match was great. I remember that match. It was awesome. I did think it was a little bit too long, but it was a good match in the end. And Bruce Pritchard kind of had to console Abyss a little bit to kind of calm him down because he seemed to be very frazzled by the fact that they went over. This was their first Netflix show. He wanted it to be perfect. And to him, in his mind, it wasn't. So he was like very apologetic, like, boss, I'm sorry. I really tried to get them, to clean this up and tighten it up. And Bruce was like, hey, they went over. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But in the end, it was a good show. They had a solid match. And that's all that matters. And then William Regal saw that Abyss was like, very, very razzled. So he came in and was like, hey, don't beat yourself up so much. Understand that you were doing your job. You did the best that you could. You were pushing things forward. You cut a lot. You did your job. Don't worry about trying to, he was like, I'm just trying to make, this man happy. I just want him to be happy. And, William was like, yeah, but you need to be happy because you did an excellent job today. So he kind of had to bring Abyss back down to earth a little bit. And it goes off basically explaining where we're headed on episode 2, which is the push. And the push is gonna, explain Jey Uso being pushed to be a solo superstar, but not only that, being pushed to be form in the future a world heavyweight champion. And it's also going to talk about Cody Rhodes' title defense and everything in between. So this is going to talk about the push of superstars and how that works, which I'm very interested in that. So episode 1 is down. Let's get into episode 2.